ocean campaign. Check it out. Dr. Busby is dead on. I've interviewed a lot of nuclear physicists, medical doctors, you name it. And we can see for miles and miles the currents that come right at North America from Japan, the winds, the trade winds, the jet stream, all of it. And what he's saying here, I know most of you understand this, but I want this to really sink in, is that you've got all the hot particles, not just the background radiation. It's those hot particles that are making the general background ambient level be higher. But when you've got the particles itself, that'd be like if you had a lead detector and you were at a shooting range, you picked up higher levels of lead. If you actually, though, eat one of those lead bullets, you're going to get really sick. That's the hot particle. That's the analogy. And so you've got whales that are eating the fish, or if they're baleen, they're eating all the plankton, bioaccumulating like a sponge, like a filter, the radioactive particles that have been dumping in. And so they're literally being used as filters, and that's why they've tested the tuna and stuff, and they're radioactive. And so now you've got just stuff that marine biologists have never seen. Dr. Busby's with us till about 40 after, then I'm going to cover a bunch of big, important breaking news. But Dr. Busby, continuing, you got cut off by the break. Is that what you're getting at here, is why we're seeing a Pacific level collapse, the starfish disintegrating, the fish dying, the seals dying? I mean, it's undoubted across the board. Something big's going on. And if we're similar to those animals and we're eating stuff out of the ocean, what is it going to do to us bioaccumulating?
I put a picture up on my Facebook site recently, and it's sort of gone viral. But it's a picture that was taken in the 80s of a hot particle with tracks in an edible mussel. And you can see that picture on my Facebook site. Various other people have published it all over the place now. It's truly terrifying because it's, if you like, a photograph of what a hot particle does and how you see it.
Give us your official Facebook name so we can put it on screen.
It's just Chris Busby. It's just Chris Busby.
Fantastic. We'll put it up on screen. Go ahead.
Anyway, yeah. So I mean, I don't know if this is the answer, Alex, but the point is something is happening there. There's no doubt about it. The very important paper, the one that really did it for me, is by K.R. Smith. And various people who are oceanographers, and they were concerned about global warming. And what they've been doing is they've been measuring the amount of dead creatures that reach the seabed. So in other words, you know, they can take a certain period of time and they can measure the mass of dead things that die on the surface of the ocean and then float down and hit the bottom. And what they noticed, and they do this graph of various different parts of the Northeast Pacific, and you can see that after Fukushima, the amount of dead creatures that reached the sea bottom suddenly accelerated up to an enormously high level in all of the places that they were measuring. And they say, oh, there must be some problem with global warming and that it's cutting in and this and that. But it's obviously not global warming because nothing has happened with that sort of trend in global warming. But certainly something has happened with that sort of trend from Fukushima. And I think it must be that the uranium because most of the stuff coming out, although a lot of the radioactivity is not uranium, in terms of actual mass, vast amounts of uranium come out of nuclear sites. And so I think a lot of this stuff's coming out in the form of nanoparticles spreading into the ocean and then being carried by the plankton. It's getting into some of these microorganisms in the ocean and then going up the food chain in that way. And it will, in that way, probably it will drift across and end up on the California coast. In which case, what you need to do is to watch out for inhaling the air within about 1 kilometer of the coast. People in coastal communities are going to increase their level of risk from cancer and various other diseases, if that's the case. But the trouble is nobody's measuring it. Nobody's measuring this stuff. And there is no independent global institute or organization that is funded to do this or can do it because there's no money to do it, you know. And of course, you've got all these well-meaning people wandering about with Geiger counters, but that really is no help. We need to know where this stuff is, and we need to characterize it properly. And nobody's doing that. That's the problem. But what certainly we can see is the effects of something. We can certainly see the collapse of the Pacific biota, the collapse of the Pacific ecosystem. And that is truly terrifying.
It certainly is. And again, my issue, we've talked about this before, I want to come back in one more segment and talk about other issues that are important and how you think we protect ourselves. But government's not even saying they're investigating. And, oh, who knows? It could be red eating utensils. I mean, that's an actual quote by one of the health department people. And then they act like you're weird to even care that the radiation level in some areas is 15 times what they call normal background, and they confirm what amateurs with Geiger counters are saying, and it's like bad to even care. It's incredible.
Well, I mean, as far as that's concerned, if you take me, I'm one of the few people that speaks about this stuff, and I just get attacked continuously from all over the place. You know, there is no doubt in my mind that there is an operation taking place from within government or from people within government to cover up all of these things. So it's no surprise that...
Well, sure, look at Japan. Stay there. Let's talk about the cover-up and what it's done in Japan, because now that cover-up has collapsed. Dr. Chris Busby's our guest, llrc.org. The facts are in. The studies are legion. Sodium fluoride and other members of the fluorine family that are added to Western water supplies are devastating the health and cognitive ability of the people that drink it. So the question is, why are the social engineers adding it to the water? Simple. Dumb down the host population that the parasitic technocracy is feeding on. We developed Fluoride Shield to be the highest quality, highest standards, because I use it every day and my family uses it every single day. Let's take a closer look at the ingredients that make up this special proprietary formula. Tamarind has been celebrated for its ability to immobilize toxic fluoride residues, while zeolites have a long history of attracting and holding toxic compounds. Enter fulvic acid, an excellent cleansing agent. Then we added the highest quality shilajit, a rare compound that is collected from the high mountains of the Himalayas. We topped it all off with the powerhouse herb cilantro that is intended to mobilize fluoride and other dangerous compounds for removal from the body. And the final touch to energize this formula is our proprietary nascent iodine. And as always, consult your physician as well, because that is important. And finally, Fluoride Shield, Survival Shield, and all the products at InfoWarsLife.com grew out of my quest to try to find the very best compounds from God's cornucopia to protect myself and my family. And from our research, I believe we are bringing you the best, highest quality products. And you have that commitment from Alex Jones and the entire InfoWars crew. I want to explain something here. There is a left, there is a right, but they're controlled worldwide by corporate interest that try to keep us at each other's throats and to basically control the debate. Carol Quigley at Georgetown, top advisor to the CIA and Bill Clinton, wrote that in his book, Tragedy and Hope. But when I say transcend the left-right paradigm, there are issues that the right promotes that make sense and are good. There's issues the so-called left promotes that make sense or good, some that are bad, on both sides. This isn't about being left or right. It's about surviving, having a world, not being insane. And so many cultures would just throw their garbage in the river. Well, you could do that when it was just regular garbage. Or the Romans would drink their wine out of lead-lined pots, and that's why they were so violent and insane. They studied Roman bones. And as soon as they started adopting the lead-lined pottery, they became more violent, more insane, more aggressive. And then it finally probably led to their collapse. And that's lead, ladies and gentlemen. The unleading of gasoline is directly correlated the last 30 years with massive decreases in crime. I mean, that's just a fact, along with other issues as well. Citizens becoming more armed. But the lead issue is big. That's how the left always counters me. Well, crime went down because lead being taken out. I'm like, yeah, I know. That's part of it. But this is GMO. I'm all for science. I'm all for a better crop, hybridization. That's not what this is. They'll put 14 different genes and a pesticide producing bacteria or fungus in it, and it kills the bees. Thousands of studies. I've interviewed top scientists that were making millions of dollars a year. And then they found out their potato or their corn was killing the lab animals. And they said, we can't put this out. I've had these scientists on. And then they'd be called aside by the corporate head saying, you like your $3 million a year, doctor? You like that big fancy house? There are too many people. I've talked to Russian scientists, British scientists, Pakistani scientists, U.S. scientists who get brought into the room. Monsanto doesn't eat their own GMO. That's Associated Press. That's CBC. The Chinese and other globalist elite have their own organic greenhouses The elite drink purified water. They're moving to rural areas because, ladies and gentlemen, they've decided to just pollute everything, and they've gone crazy, and they're building more reactors as they melt down. And people think, oh, it's a left-wing issue to care about radiation. No, it's looking at a Geiger counter and deformed whales and all the fish life dead, okay? And so it isn't about left or right or about what issue you're for. It's about what issue is real. And they're covering up. My cousin died when he was very young, and they admitted it was from Agent Orange because his dad had been a helicopter pilot in Vietnam. My uncle died, and the doctors looked at his heart and stuff and said, no, there's Agent Orange scarring here. We see this in Vietnam vets that were in Agent Orange. I had a cousin and my uncle die because of Monsanto, okay? This is real, folks. This is real. Now, I'm going to shut up and go back to Dr. Busby, but I'm sitting here breathing increased radiation. I'm sitting here living in this toxic waste. GMO is everywhere. Allergies are off the charts, directly connected to all this stuff bombarding our immune systems. And the state won't even look at this. When Berkeley came out and said, we've got a huge increase in radiation in the water, they were told to shut up by the feds. I mean, this is insanity. And I think, Dr. Busby, we're not left, we're not right. We are for self-preservation and not insane. But I want you to finish your points on radiation, on other concerns, what's happening, and where you think this is going and what's happened in Japan. I'm going to try to shut up and let you talk, but you just heard me speak about the mindset of the elite. I've studied this in history. There are times when you get megalomaniacal elites who are so nihilistic they just don't care. So is it a depopulation agenda? Or is it that they just don't care and have gone insane? Because the laws of physics, you're a physicist, you know this, are going to catch up with us. Increased cancer rates, increased deformity, increased mental illness, increased lowering of IQ. I mean, the West is in a toxic stew. There's no doubt we're killing ourselves.
Right. Well, all of those things are true. And in fact, it's not a case of what's going to happen in the future because it's already happened. I mean, if you look at the cancer rates I've studied in real terms, in fact, that's where I came in 1995. I was looking at the cancer rates going back to 1960 and 1950. And the weapons testing that occurred in 59 to 63 caused a 30 to 40% increase in cancer 20 years later, and that was the famous cancer epidemic in real terms. But of course the governments came along and all their stooges came along and said, oh, it's just because we have an aging population. But that wasn't true. The age standardized rates went up. And what we're seeing now is continuation of the same scenario. But of course, ultimately, you cannot continue to boil the frog. Eventually, the frog dies. And I think what we're seeing in the Pacific now, which is the death of the Pacific ecosystem, is going to ultimately just be a mirror to the death of the human ecosystem. We have imposed our energy and our will and our toxic waste on the planet so long now that that's going to come back and bite us, and already is doing so. And the evidence is quite clear from all all that we hear from Japan, that it's already doing that even now, just a few years after Fukushima. And we know what happened in Belarus because we've studied Belarus. So we know that the population collapsed in Belarus. There was an increase in death rate in the old people. The average lifespan fell from something like 65 to something like 45 people. And of course, the birth rate collapsed as well. So if you've got no children being born and you've got older children dying, then that's the end of your population. That's an ecological population collapse. And that is what we're seeing. We're seeing people who cannot have babies now. So huge amounts of effort are now going into doing in vitro fertilization because normal methods of fertilization don't work anymore. And goodness knows what's going to be the status of the children that are born. Enough studies have been done to show that children who were born after the exposures of Chernobyl and the exposures from the weapons fallout had much smaller brains, much lower IQs, and of course in animals also too. So yeah, sure. But then the question is, who's doing this? Are they mad? And so all the rest of it. I mean, I'm inclined to the belief that there's not some kind of mad, monstrous cabal at the top of this, some kind of Mekon-like character, sort of, who hates everybody and is totally insane, pulling the strings and causing the IAEA to cover things up and all these other things that we know happen. I think it's just an economic machine. That's what I think it is. I think we have built ourselves through economics, and probably through a lot of people who want to get rich constructing these economic systems. we have constructed a monster. We have made a sort of Frankenstein that is now unstoppable. That's what I think is the problem, because ultimately all of these efforts to cover up radiation and to build more nuclear power stations and do all of these things ultimately are aimed at just enriching people with uranium shares and causing the military to become more powerful. And of course, it's built into the military to become more powerful. That's what they do. It's built into organizations that that are set up to make money. And once you put all of these systems together into a structure, you have created a monster, and that's the monster that we have. Ultimately, that monster will be taken down, together with all of the rest of us, unfortunately, unless we can manage to find somewhere to hide, by nature. And we're seeing the beginning of that now. We're seeing the beginning of that now.
Well, I don't doubt that there's a carrying level for the planet and that there are overpopulation issues in certain areas. My concern is the rigged economy, because I've read the Royal Commission on Population. I've seen what they've said. They've blocked all the new developments because old bureaucracies wanted to stay in control, and they've done everything they can to shut down any real competition in developing cleaner systems and turned any new development into just a scam boondoggle where nothing even gets developed. And then meanwhile, the genetic engineering, all of it, the elite use the environmental movement as a power grab and as a way to tax people instead of actually trying to clean stuff up. It's just insanity. It's like no matter what you do, somebody's going to cheat inside the system. It's so rigged, as Rolling Stone reported on the banks, that the people, Max Kaiser calls it suicide bankers, where there were people in the World Trade Center that even after one tower had collapsed, they stayed in the other one because they could sit there making trades, making millions of dollars a minute, even though they were going to die. And that is the definition of insanity.
Well, they got what they deserved, yeah, that's sure. But anyway, you know, after the Second World War, there were a whole load of philosophers and psychologists who tried to figure out how on earth you know, the Second World War happened and all those terrible things happened in Nazi Germany and so on. And they basically figured out that any human beings could do anything, given the right sort of culture surrounding them and supporting their idiocies and insanities. They would form a sort of group of insane people who would then run amok and insanely continue to do what they were doing, even if it was killing themselves. And that's
that was the Milgram and Stanford experiments where they found, what was it, 90+% of people who were nice, good folks with no criminal background, when ordered by an authority figure to murder, would do it.
Yes, that's right. All those electric shock people. I know. Well, anyway, we kind of know all this, but the problem is, you know, we're in this awful position of knowing it all and watching it all collapse and not being able to do anything about it. Anyway, we are trying to do something about it, but the problem is within the current political system doesn't seem to be possible. Because they control the media and they control the, well, apart from you and a few people like that, you know, mostly, you know, you have these CNN type people who will just, they have, what do they call it now? They call the Science Media Center. I came across this recently. There's this woman called Fiona Fox who runs a thing called the Science Media Center. And basically what they do is they bully journalists into telling lies on the basis that they are the people who know about the science, and people who are independent scientists like me just get told that they shouldn't talk to us, you know, that we're insane. So that they have an actual media machine, which is like, if you like, the opposite of you. But they have a lot more money than you do. That's the problem.
Well, look at how no newspapers in California would report the increased radiation levels until local journalists, just citizens with a website and a YouTube account, went out. Others joined them, found the same thing. And the health department had to go out and say, okay, it is 5-10 times higher, but that's not a problem. And we're not going to look into why that's happening. I mean, that is the definition of insanity. In closing, Dr. Busby, looking at Japan, you know, we always remember the official story the first month almost 3 years ago, but now it's admitted there was a cover-up. It's admitted that there's a cover-up of deaths and cancers and mutations in plants and animals. And now the mafia is running the cleanup, and it's just sinking into the ocean. What is your gut that's going to? What does your gut tell you is going to happen as they try to clean up the site?
I don't think they can clean up the site, Alex. I think that they're going to have to throw a fence around that and just watch it forever. I mean, I don't see what else they can do. I did think of and they did think about the possibility of bombing it into the ocean. But frankly, I think there's nothing much they can do now. The genie's out of the bottle. You know, the material in those reactors is now in the ground somewhere, and there's no way that they can get it there. And the more water they pump in there, and the continuous water that comes down into the groundwater there, will just wash the uranium out into the sea and continue to pollute the Pacific Ocean more or less forever.
What about building a giant seawall? They could pump the water out as they build dams and build. I mean, this is a big project. They should build like a Hoover Dam around it.
Well, that's a possibility, but then they'd have to get under it. That's really the problem, because, you know, the hydraulic pressure from the water that went in there would just dilute the uranium and the other material. A lot of it's soluble, and then it would go underneath.
So you think it's more dangerous for them to have homeless people? I saw photos of these folks, obvious, complete alcoholics. I'm not knocking them, but, you know, homeless old men is who they have removing the rods, and they're using duct tape to try to seal leaks. I mean, is it more dangerous to have those rods touch?
Well, if you touch the rods, you're dead. I mean, there's no two ways about it. I mean, the radiation fields in the 1 meter away from those fuel rods is lethal. I mean, that's what the Chernobyl people found. Those people will die if they get anywhere near those rods. There's no way that they can get near those rods.
I mean, but what's the current plan right now? They've got armies of homeless people crawling around in there. That sounds like an insane idea.
It's all an insane idea, but the problem is that what else is there? I don't know quite what else there is. I mean, I'm at a loss. I just throw up my hands and say, you know, all I can say is you shouldn't have done it in the first place. You know, and that's the problem with nuclear right from the very beginning. That although it might be a very low probability risk, it's an extremely high impact risk. And now we've got all these nuclear power stations all over the world, certainly an awful lot in America, where exactly the same thing could happen.
Well, sure, and even Congress people, even congressional hearings had meant that if we were to have a EMP or an electrical power grid go out, even for a few weeks, they'd run out of diesel power. We'd have meltdown Chernobyls all over the world. This is insane.
That's right. Well, if you have a big electromagnetic pulse like the one that is possible, that one, then of course you knock out your generators as well. Then you really have got catastrophe.
All right. Well, llrc.org. Dr. Busby, thank you so much for what you're doing for all of us, and thank you for spending time with us today.
Okay, you're welcome. See you soon.
All right, folks, thank you. All we're trying to do here is to draw attention to what's going on. That's all I'm trying to do. I don't have all the answers here. When we send our reporters out there this week to go from Southern California through San Francisco all the way up to Seattle, we're going to do this a little bit different. We're going to start in San Francisco, go up to Seattle, fly back down and check far Southern California from the border right up to Los Angeles. So they're going to be there a full week, 4 of my crew members. And we can only do all of this because of your support. When you buy the T-shirts, the books, the videos, the high-quality organic, shade-grown, and volcanic soil, Wake Up America coffee, my favorite type of coffee. So we've brought it to you right here, roasted in Colorado, shipped out worldwide from Austin, Texas, the Wake Up America coffee, the Made in1776.com brand of George Washington belt buckles and limited edition clothing, the ThyroSafe. We sell the government-recommended stuff as well, but you can't take that long-term. That's for in the middle of a major disaster. And, of course, we have the Survival Shield from InfoWarsLife.com that is the proprietary Nation iodine. It's blue-purple when it's on paper. No other iodine does that. It's red or black because it's not really Nation iodine. It's bound iodine, oxidized iodine. This is real Nation iodine. National Academy of Sciences certified. Whole 9 yards. This is the only one that does it. I discovered this with doctors and scientists who had known about it for over a decade and said, my goodness, I want to bring this to the public. We do it with InfoWars Life Survival Shield, which is almost sold out, but we get more in the next week to 2 weeks. I'm told some shipped out today from the manufacturing laboratory. But the point is, InfoWarsLife.com. The fluoride shield is a 2-ounce bottle, not a 1-ounce bottle, and it's only $10 more. It has the Nation iodine and 5 other key compounds that pull out the fluoride and other toxic members of the halogen family and heavy metals, you name it. Go watch the informational videos and read about it at InfoWarsLife.com or call toll-free 888-253-3139. I did deep research because of the increasing radiation levels and talked to all these medical doctors, nutritionists, scientists, you name it, and came upon you need to take non-iodine during emergencies. You take it all the time. and that the very best was what we got a hold of and have brought to you via InfoWarsLife.com. So this is what I take. It's what my wife takes, what my children takes. Consult your physician before you take it, but it's in a regular dose amount that's recommended there. InfoWarsLife.com or 888-253-3139. And you can also call that number if you want to write to us by mail. They can give you the P.O. Box number as well. But InfoWars Survival Shield and InfoWars Fluoride Shield at InfoWarsLife.com. Visit InfoWars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. When you're on the site, you can also tune in 24 hours a day to my daily radio broadcast. There's also a free iPhone app to listen to the syndicated radio show when and where you want.